We are speaking with the one and only Don Brewer of Grand Funk Railroad, and as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, Monsieur Don. Comment allez-vous? How are you?
Well, I'm good, Mitch. How's it going?
Good, good. An absolute thrill to talk to you. I mean, you are definitely an icon of the music business. There's no doubt about that, and of course, Grand Funk is in itself an iconic band. Let's talk about this the recent tour that you've been on, the Some Kind of Wonderful tour. It's wrapping up in December. Let's start off with talk to me about getting back on the road because, of course, with COVID and everything else, it's been somewhat of a difficult transition from touring to full stop to let's get this motor running again. Talk to me about sort of getting back out there and doing it all over again.
Well, it was a godsend, really, that we were able to get back on the road for that year, close to a year and a half that we were off the road.
Right.
We'd been touring, we'd been touring off and on for close to 20 years, and to sit at home for a year and a half was pretty tough to do. It was, it brought up the ugly question, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that the end? And really, it was very depressing. I got to say, I threw myself into practicing every day and working out and staying in shape and that kind of stuff. At 73 years old, I have to keep everything moving.
You got to keep going, yeah. Keep
moving,
loose.
Right. So, that was really what it was. But when it was evident that we were going to be able to get back on the road, it was truly like, oh, thank God,
Right.
we can go back out, and it's been it's been a little touchy, off and on. Every now and then, certain areas of the country, the health department comes in and says, oh no, you can't put that many people in an enclosed area, and so forth and so on. So, it's been a little touchy. We've been postponing, dates for this tour. This Some Kind of Wonderful tour goes back to actually 2019,
Right.
And so it's a continuation of that tour. Now some of these dates are being pushed off into 2022, so we're probably going to continue the Some Kind of Wonderful tour into next year. So there you go.
which is great. Now, does it help you did COVID help you refocus your career in the sense that there's a lot of bands that talk about farewell tours and we're done and I'm too old for this and it's and then you miss it. You're forced to miss it and you just sort of go, oh yeah, I don't want to retire. No, this was.
It's kind of it's kind of the question, when you get to our age, and I feel for Bob Seger, who I played with off and on for many years, that he decided to pack it up, and I go, God, what does he do with all of his time? So, I'm sure he keeps himself busy in the studio and stuff, but still, it's really a kick to me to be able to get on a stage in front of an audience and play songs for people. They know what the songs are. They want you to play them. It's like, where else do you get that? You just don't get it anyplace. It just doesn't exist out there. That kind of the feedback, And so I intend to do it until my wife and my daughter tell me, get off the stage. You're too old.
Yeah, stop it. You're embarrassing us at this point.
That's right.
The tour, when it started in 2019, was, of course, the 50th anniversary tour. 2021 is the 50th anniversary of that great Shea Stadium show. Talk to me a little bit about that. To have 5 decades, not only in the music business, but in the same band, the same brand, for the lack of a better thing, because, it's rarefied air. There's a million guitarists in the States right now hoping for a break, and nobody will ever hear them. And you got 50 years.
Yeah, it truly is. I'm blessed. I mean, I really feel that way. Whenever I get down, I always go back to that feeling. Like, man, you've had a great life. It's just nobody, I won't say nobody gets this chance, but very few people get this chance to do what they decided to do when they were a kid. And they loved doing it when they were a kid, and to do it your entire life. It's just like, I think that's everybody's dream.
Yeah.
So, I count my blessings. I really do.
Do you look at Mick Jagger or even, I'm trying to forget the MC5, Wayne Kramer. Do you look at those
Wayne
two?
Kramer.
Do you look at those two when they dance around the stage at their age and just go, how the hell are they doing? Because I saw Wayne on the MC50 tour like a year or 2 years ago, and he moves like an 18-year-old. I was like, my God.
Well, it takes work, I mean, from what I've heard, I don't know any of the guys in the Stones, personally or anything, but it takes work, and from what I understand, Mick Jagger, he works at it, he dedicates himself to it, he's a runner. He spends hours in front of a mirror, working on his dance moves, and I mean, it doesn't just happen, people have to put an effort in to make it happen. And I respect these guys for it. I really do.
Yeah. So do I. Let me talk to you quickly about Max Carl and Bruce Kulick, and I'll start with Max. You go back 50 years, there was a voice to Grand Funk, there was a sound to Grand Funk. How easy or difficult was it finding Max and getting that new voice in there? And how perfectly does he fit in, do you think?
Well, we've all got, everybody in the band. I mean, Tim Cashin and Bruce Kulick and Max Carl and myself and Mel. We all love the music, I said in an interview last week, we're all Grand Funk fans, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that we've all got, everybody in the band has this love of R&B. And Grand Funk is a very unique combination of R&B and rock, I think. We came out of Flint, Michigan, which was just a little north of Detroit, and we grew up with the Motown and the Muscle Shoals and Stax and Stax Volt and all of that stuff. Wilson Pickett, and I mean that was us. And when the transition came to more of a hard rock thing in the late '60s, we were totally on board with that, with Hendrix and Cream, and that's really what we fashioned Grand Funk after, was those power trios. But we were doing an R&B spin. They were doing more of a blues thing, Hendrix and Cream, and it was blues based, and we were R&B all the way, and we took that and cranked up the volume and put it on steroids, and that's Grand Funk. And so to find a guy like Max Carl is truly. I didn't have to search for him, it just kind of happened. It was one of those things that I think it was destined to happen. I knew a guy with PV amplifiers who was working on the drums, and they made this really unique drum kit. And Stephen Volp was the guy's name. He came up with this idea for drums, and I was working with him, and he introduced me to Max Carl. And this was just at the time that Mel and I were discussing. Well, if we can find the right guys, let's go back on the road. Let's get it. And all of a sudden, Max Carl appeared in my life, and he's that guy. He's that blue-eyed soul R&B guy, and man, he knows how to nail it. So that it was one of those things that just happened.
Yeah, it really was. In the set list, you've been playing the 38 Special song "Second Chance." Talk to me about including another band's greatest hit or big hit in your set, and ultimately, when are you going to throw Rock and Roll All Night at the end of the set?
Well, Max is a co-writer on that song, and obviously he's the singer, and he was the singer in 38 Special at the time that song came along. So when we, first put this back together with Max as a singer, we kind of were looking for a way, how do we kind of go about introducing, Max, to the audience without really having to go through the whole thing. Hey, this is Max Carl. He was with 38 Special. And so we came up with this rendition of 38 Special's biggest hit,
right,
Second Chance, which Max sang and wrote. And that's our way of introducing Max to the audience, and it's not, we don't make a big deal of it. It's just like, okay, we just do the song. A lot of people kind of scratch their heads and go, but they know the song.
Of course.
They're all singing along to the song, just like they're singing along to Closer to Home and Some Kind of Wonderful. So it fits in that respect, and it gives us a way to introduce Max without going through the hey, this is Max Carl. He was with 38 Special. Even before that, he was with Jack Mack and the Heart Attack, and
But I mean, think of how wonderful it would be to go from "We're an American Band" right into "Rock and Roll All Night." I mean, that would be a perfect. That'd be a perfect way to end a set list. Well, since we're talking sort of about Kiss, talk to me about the choice of Bruce, because when you look at what he did with Kiss in the '80s. It was very much the guitar hero, guitar shredder kind of thing. There were some fast notes, and there was a lot of technical wizardry going on, which is sort of on the outside of what Grand Funk does. Were you concerned bringing him in that he wouldn't be able to have it, or did you just know? How did you get to hook up with Bruce?
Well, again, it was life circumstances. I think, and again, Mel and I were. We were in this place of like, if we can find the right guys, then we'll go out on the road, and it was one of those kind of things. And so, I just kind of thought a little bit about, guitar players that I know. And Bruce came to mind because, when I was on the road back in the 80s with Bob Seger, Bruce was playing with Michael Bolton of all people in a band,
Blackjack.
Michael Bolton was the Blackjack. Well,
he was Michael Bolton at the time. On top of that,
Bolton, yeah. But he, it was at the time it was just Michael Bolton. He had a sort of a kind of a hit, So Seger put Bolton on as the opening act, and Bruce comes out and he's playing, and many years later, I happened to, marry my second wife is Sonny Quinn, and she knew Bruce, from the Michael Bolton days. She grew up in Connecticut, where all of those guys were, playing around in clubs and stuff. And so it was just one of those things where, I was looking for a guitar player, and my wife and I were, throwing names around, and Bruce Kulick came out and I decided, well, I'm going to send him an email and see what he's doing, see if he's busy, and he was working on a band called Union, I think, at the time. Yeah. But I think they were like kind of on the in, on the out, they weren't getting along, something, whatever it was. And so I approached him and said, hey, Bruce, remember me? This was, quite a few years later from when I knew him from the Michael Bolton, Bob Seger thing. And this is Don Brewer. I'm looking for a guitar player. Would you be interested in doing a project with Max Carl and Mel Shocker and I? And he wrote me back, well, if this really is Don Brewer, yeah, I'd be interested.
That's funny.
He thought it was a spoof, So yeah, Bruce is not just a shredder, a heavy metal shredder. Of course, he does that very well, but he's played with everybody and everything and every style of music. And again, the guy is just he's great. He knows how to play anything virtually. So and again, he's a Grand Funk fan. He grew up watching Grand Funk at the Fillmore.
Yeah.
So. It was that kind of a thing, and again, it was the pieces, kind of fell into place, and Mel and I decided, let's do this.
And we mentioned the Shea Stadium show. I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I want to just quickly go into Detroit, since we're on the Kiss thing. You have Amboy Dukes, you have Dick Wagner and the Frost, you've got Grand Funk, you've got this whole scene, and you've talked about the whole Detroit scene. Everybody talks about it. What was it like when you started seeing bands like Alice Cooper with the theater coming in, and Kiss with the makeup coming in, and taking over Cobo Hall? Were you just looking at that going, what is wrong with these people? This is really, that's kind of... Or you're like, wow, this is exciting. Maybe we should do something a little bit more flashy.
No, I didn't go that way. I mean, I kind of looked at it more like, it's just that's where rock is going. It's
Right.
going to theater. It's definitely heading into theater. I remember going to see Alice Cooper at Cobo Hall, I think it was, and the opening act was Edgar Winter's White Trash. And what a contrast that was, between Edgar Winter's White Trash and which was totally hard rock R&B, blow your brains out, that kind of high energy stuff, to Alice Cooper, which was this more of a pop rock theater kind of a thing, And I came away from that going, God, I loved Edgar Winter.
Yeah,
I really did. Yeah, and all of the Kiss makeup and the theatrics, with Alice Cooper and the guy from Black Sabbath, Ozzy, biting the heads off a bird in front of the record executives. I mean, I wasn't totally down with all of that stuff, but I understand it. I totally get it.
Hey, on an aside, I just spoke to Ted Nugent the other day, and I know Ted as the wild and crazy guy with the bow and arrows and stuff, but when he was with the Amboy Dukes back in that day and back in the Detroit scene, was he sort of wild and crazy, and was there a reputation with him, or was he just the Amboy Dukes and they played music? I mean, do you remember the name?
Well, yes, I definitely remember, and they definitely had a high ego level,
right.
Even at that time, that was always Ted. That was his thing.
Right.
It's just like I'm the alpha male in the room, and I'm the only alpha male in the room. That's him, and that was him then too.
Okay.
Sure.
Shea Stadium. By the way, I get along with Ted. Politically, we may not agree, but I'm old school, where you can have a conversation with people you don't agree with politically. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, Shea Stadium. What I want to ask you about Shea Stadium is the fact that it was you're innovators, because you look back in the '60s and rock was a club thing, was a theater thing, was an arena thing. And then the Beatles come out and they do stadiums. And they were one of the first, if not the first. And then you do a stadium. What was that like for you, going from a dirty, sweaty, dank club into a giant open space with 50,000 people sitting there? Was it difficult to adapt the show and adapt what you were doing? Was it like, oh, wow, this is the future? Or just talk to me about that whole... Because it was new, stadium rock was new.
I mean, we were scared, we were totally intimidated by the whole thing, and we didn't go from clubs to Shea Stadium. We had been playing arenas and fairly good size, places, not baseball stadiums, but it was very intimidating, because number one, they wouldn't let anybody on the field. At that time, have you ever been to a rock show where there's nobody in front of the stage? Well, that's what that was. Here we are at home plate, and the audience is way out in left and center and right field. They were up in the bleachers. They couldn't come on the field, so it was terribly separated from the audience, and scary. Because it's just like that amount of that number of people cheering and yelling, and they were avid Grand Funk fans. Totally over the top. We had taken New York by storm at that time, with a billboard and Times Square and everything. And for us, it was scary. Well, I think I was, maybe 19 years old at the time. And, it was a big deal. And, the whole thing being tagged as selling out faster than the Beatles. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But innovators in stadium rock. That's quite something.
Well, I think we were definitely innovators in arena rock.
True.
We came into the arena thing, coming out of clubs and coming out of, the Fillmores and the Grandee ballrooms and those kind of places, which were hippie kind of places. all of a sudden we're playing in arenas, and some of them, you get out in Iowa and Nebraska and those kind of places. They were just rodeo arenas. They had a dirt floor with bleachers and a tin roof, and the sound was terrible, the lights were terrible, and nobody was prepared to present rock and roll to that number of people at that time. So it was, as far as innovation is concerned, we had to come up with amps. We had to come up with a PA system. We had to come up with lights that would fill those places because nobody had them. You couldn't just go out to to Nebraska and hire some guy to, hey, we need lights and sound. For what? Well, for an 8,000-seat arena. Well, we don't have anything like that, So we had to put it together and take it with us, And so as far as innovation is concerned, yes, we were definitely innovators of arena rock. I mean, we really were.
No, but you make a good point, because all the rigging and all the trusses and all that stuff, you don't think of that, but somebody had to innovate that, and somebody had to say, well, you got to get these lights up. I never thought of that, but you do.
They didn't exist.
True.
True. When we started playing 8,000 to 10,000 seat places, the lighting system existed that was there. And we played many nights like this, was 3 Super Troopers up in the, 3 spotlights. So I had one on me, one on Mel, and one on Mark. That was the lighting system.
Wow.
That was it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you never think of that, but, having started seeing shows in 1979 up to now, I remember, of course, how the advent of video screens slowly came in, and the advent of pyrotechnics. Like I saw it develop into going from concert to show, because now we don't go to concerts, now we go to a show. Right. But you're right. When you went from clubs to arenas, there was also a transition. Never thought of that.
There was nothing existed out there, especially in the places we were playing out in the middle of America. Maybe in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, you could find those kind of systems, but not anyplace else.
Not in North Dakota. Let me ask you about the live album, and I've always said to myself, you should have had an album called the studio album, but you never went there, but because that would have been funny. But the live album comes out, and now we look back at it, and it's revered as being this sort of true, original, sort of gritty kind of thing. But when it first came out, people went, "Oh, what is this nonsense?" But yet, here we are, but they did. Critics didn't like it. You go back into,
critics, yeah.
But you go back into Billboard or whatever, and the write-ups are not kind. Some of them.
Oh, they hated us. They
which is
hated
dumb.
Us, and it was too pronged, really. I mean, and number one, Terry Knight, loved to ram everything down people's throats, especially the critics, and he loved to basically give them the finger. I wouldn't allow interviews, only talk to him, the spin he put out about this band, was to glorify him.
Yep.
He was the Svengali, and we were his puppets, and he handpicked us and put us out there, and he tells us everything to do. And he made it sound like it was all him, and the critics hated that, they bought it. And so they would come to a Grand Funk show, and they'd sit there and they'd watch all these people going crazy for what we were doing and really getting into it, and they hated that too. It's just because they just didn't. I guess they just didn't get it. That why would anybody like a band? This bunch of puppets. They're just puppets. So
you were the original boy band.
There was that going on, and the other thing was, we didn't glorify our live album or our live recordings or anything else. It was raw. What you hear is what was there, and it basically just raw tracks, done on a probably on a 4-track at the time. And so that put most bands in that position where they're just putting out their raw material. Well, quickly everybody else that put out a live record, it was all doctored up, and the vocals were redone, and the leads were done, and this and the mix, and then it was just so you compare that to what we were, and there's just no comparison with our album and that, but the people got it.
Yeah.
The audience got it. That's what they wanted. They wanted that raw, honest rock, grungy sound, and that's what we were. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out great. And of course, we're looking at 51 years later, and people now talk about it as being one of the greatest live albums ever because it was live. And I'll tell you this: there was a band, and I'm not going to mention the band's name, but they were about to release a live album, and I was friendly with the band members, and they said, "Yeah, we've booked so and so studio in L.A. We're going to go record the live album next week." And it's like, what? It's like, what are you doing? And, Aldo Nova lives down the street from me, and I was at his house the other day in August. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is where so-and-so band recorded their live album. They flew in and they did their parts. And I'm like, they recorded their live? Like, what? What?
Yeah,
it's so disappointing. And then let's just quickly, listen, it's smoke and mirrors, right?
Now it's come around. Now it's come around to that what you see on stage for a lot of the bands is totally recorded. It's completely, they're sitting there, but they're basically just doing pantomime. They're singing along with it, but they're playing along with tracks. They've got elaborate recording, recorded systems, and it's just totally canned. Completely canned, and everybody goes, "Oh, they sound just like the record." Well, that's because that's basically the record. You're
is the record. Yeah. Well, not to condemn anybody, but most bands, I would say, a good 80% of the bands that are playing arenas aren't 100% live. They're just not. And similarly, I was at a sound check 2 years ago, and the band was actually pumping in crowd noise so that it would make it sound. But at sound check, they were like, okay, check the bass, check the guitar, blah, blah. And then they're like, okay, check the swell. And I was like, check the swell. And they started pumping in the crowd noise. And believe it or not, during the live show, you would hear it pump in as they were trying to get the audience cranked up. And I'm just like, wow, we're faking crowd swell. Jeez Louise, we have reached a new low.
yeah. But that's where things have gone. And people, people generally don't pick up on it. They'd rather just go along with it. So it's. But yeah, that's where it's gone.
But you know what?
I enjoy a live band. I love hearing a live band. And that's mistakes and all. There you go.
There's a perfection in the imperfection. That's what I'll say. But I'll quickly play devil's advocate and say two things. First of all, at the price of a ticket, $200, $300 for some of the higher end arena acts. If I've paid that, I don't want to go home thinking, oh my God, there was feedback and the drummer this and the that and the broken stick. I want to go home and say, what a great show. And from the band's perspective, with social media, you don't want to be like, oh, look at Don Brewer, he screwed up, it's all over Twitter. You don't want that. So I can sort of see it from both ends, that it's sort of a happy medium, because social media will crucify the bands, and if it's not, the fan goes home pissed off that he paid $300 for a crap.
Well,
I still prefer a live show.
I prefer a live show. I mean, I don't mind a little enhancement here and there, and I can always hear it, but it's, I'd rather hear the imperfections. I really would, and if somebody messes up, good. I mean, it's live. It's live. That's what it's supposed to be. Right?
Well, I agree, and I'm a big fan of the mistake. And when I'm at a show and I hear a mistake, I go, "Oh yes, it's live. Yes."
When you get into recording stuff, I mean, our first 3 albums, On Time, Grand Funk, and Closer to Home, have mistakes and all on them, because at that time, we weren't given years to record.
No.
We had to record basically within a week, and so we would rehearse everything before we'd go in, we'd cut the tracks, maybe a day or 2 days of tracks, do overdubs on the 3rd day, do mixing on the 4th day, and be done on the 5th day, I mean, and so you just didn't have time to worry about mistakes. So you left the mistakes on the records, I mean, so, and that was okay too, but as far as I was concerned, as long as it wasn't so glaring that it distracts the person from completely away from the song,
And there was also the inconvenience. You're like, oh, we made a mistake. Who wants to get the razor blade and cut this tape? And you're like, not me. Just leave it. Or just leave it.
I was never big of the perfect recording thing, and when when bands started taking years to record albums, I said, count me out.
Yeah, tap out. Well, you go back to the Rolling Stones or to Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin and all these bands that recorded albums basically like in, a day. You listen to them now and you go, oh, that's full of mistakes, but that's what we love. Because now you hear an album and it's so sanitized. You go, where's the vibe? Where's the
vibe? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I look for in recordings, or bands or anything. Is like I want the feeling. I want the feel. I don't care about the mistakes. I don't care if somebody's singing a little bit, flat or sharp, or if it's not perfect, harmony. And I mean, I think that's great. I mean, that's just kind of what it's all about.
I agree. And there's and I'll give you a perfect example, and then we'll wrap up. But the Scorpions on one of their very first albums have a song called "They Need a Million," and you hear the fingers on the guitar going up, so it goes chit chit chit. It goes all through the song, and it's. You would think, wow, that's kind of irritating, but I try to imagine the song without those finger parts because I just know that you can hear the and it's just like today they would have sanitized that, they would have Pro Tooled it out. But it's so strange to hear it that it's actually endearing in the song. You're just like, no, that song needs that chord change. Anyway, it's fascinating to see how far we've come because that never would have passed muster. Now they would have just said, "Get that out of here! Right. It's terrible." Put some synthetic strings on and get those. Anyway. The homogenization of rock and roll. I mean, that's it's like the malls of America and the shopping and and now the malls are going away too. But it's just everything's the same, and everybody's making music the same. It's like nobody's stepping out of the box and going, "What about this?" This is something that hasn't been done before. Let's go there. Nobody steps out of the box anymore. They're afraid to step out of the box. And it's so incredibly difficult to tell who has the character from one band to another. My daughter, who's 18, listens to the rap rock, or the rap stuff, and we'll listen to it on Sirius, and for like 45 minutes, you just go, oh, that was one great song. He goes, Dad, that was 10 different people. It's like, oh, was it really 10 different? Really? Sounded like one really long jam mix to me because it's all the same little sound effects and bells and whistles. And you're just like,
yeah.
I can tell Grand Funk from Kiss, like I can tell DeFrost from Alice Cooper, like I can tell Ted Nugent from whatever, the Scorpions.
Sure, yeah.
But
it's
now,
obvious.
But now,
right. Yeah.
And then I guess we'll finish on this. We'll just quickly go to we're an American band. You've talked about it a million gazillion times. Poison covered it, which I love. Just talk to me about the importance of that song to you, and here we are 50 years later, or 52 years later. You're still playing. Well, it didn't come out 52 years ago, but you know what I mean. The band is still playing it, and the fans love it. And when you go to a show, nobody goes and says, "Ugh, are they playing that song again? Can they not change the?" Like, it's rarefied air to have a song that you hear 100 times, and you want to hear it 100 times more. There are other songs you just go, "Oh my God, can you just take that out of the set list? Enough already." But not American band. It's just
not American band. It's got the energy. It's got. I don't know why it has it, but it just does. It's funny you brought up Poison. I was my wife and I moved a few months ago, and I'm still unpacking boxes. And I came across my Poison gold CD. Because they gave me a gold CD for that.
That's great.
It's this. It just has something to it, And I remember when we first finished recording the song with Todd Rundgren, and I heard it the very first time I heard it on the radio. I just stopped the car, and it was like unbelievably how it just it just sounds like a hit record. And to me, it still does. It sounds like a hit record. I don't know why, but it just does,
Yeah, and
it's just got that thing. Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, growing up as a kid in the 70s, I knew the song way before I knew the band. It was in your space, it was in your headphones, it was on the radio. And, at some point somebody went, who's singing that? You just go, I don't know, maybe I should look it up. And you go, but that song is just, it's so big that it goes past the band, it goes past the genre, it goes past the era. It's just the song. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it truly is. And I remember when I finished writing it too, and we were recording it in the studio in Criteria in Miami.
Yep.
And we had some of the people from Capitol that were chomping at the bit to get a new record out, from us. And they came in and they were in the control room, and they, were jumping up and down when that song was played, And I remember turning around and going, "You mean you guys really like that?"
Yeah.
I mean, because to me, I didn't know at the time or hear it or whatever, because it came from me. Right. But the reaction that they had to it was that, it's like, whoa, they're jumping up and down.
Last question: did the record company after that become a real pain in the ass, where they'd say, "So, can you write us another American band? Because we really like it." Right, because they do that, right?
Yeah, I would love, I would love to be able to do that. It's one of those things. I don't think I can, manufacture or model it, as they say.
But how many times did they take you into the office? Come on,
well,
how many times did the record company call you in and say, "Don, listen, we love the new music, but we're not hearing American Band 2.
Well,
Come on."
I'll tell you, my biggest example, that I can think of that is that we finished the American Band. We had American Band and Walk Like a Man were big, hits, top 40 hits, and then we're in the studio again to do a follow-up, Shining On, and we had the album, pretty much finished. But there just wasn't that song there that was the follow-up to We're an American Band. Shining On was, it was a hit record, but it wasn't that hit record. And it drove us to come up with, let's brainstorm here. What can we do? And that's where we came up with, Locomotion, Grand Funk doing the Locomotion. It was like a silly, stupid idea. And my God, it worked. Locomotion. Everybody thinks that's our song. They forgot about the Little Eva version. Yeah.
Good. Which is the way they should, like the Beatles with Twist and Shout. Yeah. People forgot that somebody else did Twist. The Isley Brothers did it. Anyway, it's just funny because before Doug Fieger of the Knack passed away, I had this conversation with him about My Sharona, and he goes, it's the Golden Albatross. You don't understand. It's paid for this house. It's paid for the pool. It's paid for the car. I don't have to work ever again. However, musically, it killed me because every time I went to the record company, they would look at me and say,
"That's what they want.
I don't hear a My Sharona 2. Go try again." And it's
well, luckily for us, it wasn't our swan song. I mean, we went in another direction. And we did a couple of, to me, a couple of great covers. With Locomotion and Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's. Yeah, you're constantly, held up to that standard, when you have a song like that, for sure.
I know. Yeah, I know. You're sitting there going, "What do you want? You want us to be bad, or you take the one song? Leave me alone." Anyway, Don, absolute pleasure. I'm in Montreal. Hopefully, we will see Grand Funk on the Canadian side at some point now that everything's open and ready to go. But thank you for 50.
It's getting there, isn't it? We keep our fingers crossed. Our sound guy is from Toronto, and so it's been a little hinky for him getting back and forth across the border, we're looking forward to getting back, being up there. I'd love to.
It'll be great, but thank you for the 52 years of music. I know you broke up here and there, but let's forget about that. Thank you for 52 years of music. Thank you for still doing it, and just keep doing it. Merci, as we say. Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Yeah, great to talk to you. Thank you.
You too. And we'll do this again soon. Cheers.
Okay.
All right, perfect.